There are artists, and then there are visionaries, those who do not merely create, but redefine the very fabric of art itself. Yayoi Kusama is one such visionary, a name synonymous with infinite mirrors, hypnotic dots, and a boundless imagination. Kusama's journey has been one of brilliance and struggle, resilience and reinvention. Her art is not just something to be observed, it is something to be experienced. Born in 1929 in the city of Matsumoto, Japan, Yayoi Kusama was a child who saw the world differently. Even as a young girl, she was haunted by hallucinations, visions of dots and patterns stretching endlessly, consuming everything around her. She described these moments as both terrifying and mesmerizing, a duality that would later become the essence of her art. But Kusama's childhood was not a nurturing one. Her family was wealthy yet rigid, bound by strict traditions that did not welcome creative pursuits. Her mother, disapproving of her artistic inclinations, often tore up her drawings before she could finish them. Despite this, Kusama clung to her passion. As a teenager, she discovered the work of Georgia O'Keeffe, a pioneering female artist who had made a name for herself in the male-dominated art world. Inspired, Kusama took a leap of faith. She wrote a letter to O'Keeffe asking for guidance on how to build an artistic career in the United States. To her surprise, O'Keeffe responded with encouragement, a moment that strengthened Kusama's determination. In 1957, armed with nothing but her portfolio and an unshakable belief in her art, Kusama left Japan for New York City. It was a bold, almost reckless move. She had little money and spoke minimal English, but she was determined to succeed. New York in the late 50s was a battleground of artistic innovation. The abstract expressionists, led by figures like Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko, dominated the scene. Yet Kusama's vision was different. She was not interested in grand gestures of raw emotion. She was obsessed with the infinite, the endless repetition of patterns, the obliteration of the self through art. She began creating large-scale infinity net paintings, meticulous canvases filled with repetitive, intricate net-like patterns. These works were meditative, almost trance-like, and soon caught the attention of the avant-garde scene. But Kusama did not stop at painting. She expanded into sculpture, performance art, and installation pieces, each one more immersive than the last. Yet despite her innovation, success did not come easily. Kusama was a Japanese woman in a Western, male-dominated art world. While her ideas were groundbreaking, she often saw them borrowed or outright stolen by her male contemporaries. Artists like Andy Warhol and Claes Oldenburg, who later gained immense fame, produced works strikingly similar to concepts Kusama had pioneered. She was left feeling overlooked, underappreciated, and increasingly frustrated. By the early 1970s, exhausted from both artistic struggles and her ongoing battle with mental illness, Kusama made a decision that shocked many. She left New York and returned to Japan. Kusama's return to Japan was not the triumphant homecoming one might expect for an artist of her caliber. Unlike in New York, where she had been part of the avant-garde scene, Japan's art world was still deeply conservative, and her radical, boundary-pushing works were met with indifference or even hostility. The struggles that had followed her in the United States did not disappear. Instead, they took a different shape. Amid the difficulties of reintegration, Kusama made a deeply personal decision. She voluntarily checked herself into a psychiatric hospital in Tokyo, where she has lived ever since. This choice was not a retreat from the world, but a means of survival. Kusama had battled obsessive-compulsive disorder, anxiety, and hallucinations since childhood, and the hospital provided her with a structured environment where she could focus on what mattered most: her art. From her small hospital room, Kusama set up a nearby studio where she worked tirelessly. Her creativity did not wane. Instead, it flourished. She poured herself into writing surreal poetry, novels, and painting compulsively, producing thousands of works that reflected her ongoing psychological battles and infinite visions. It was during this period that Kusama refined her infinity mirror rooms, a concept she had first experimented with in the 60s, but now expanded into full-scale installations. These rooms, covered in mirrors filled with dots, glowing orbs, and lights, created an illusion of boundless, endless space. Stepping into them was like stepping into the infinite, a place where the self dissolved, swallowed by repetition, reflection, and color. But Japan was still slow to recognize Kusama's genius. For nearly 2 decades, she remained in relative obscurity, known more for her eccentricity than for her artistic brilliance. It wasn't until the early 1990s that the international art world finally turned its gaze back to her. In 1993, Kusama was invited to represent Japan at the Venice Biennale, one of the most prestigious art exhibitions in the world. It was a turning point. Her installation, which featured a room filled with polka-dotted pumpkins, was a sensation. This moment marked the beginning of her global resurgence. From then on, Kusama's career skyrocketed. Major museums, including the Tate Modern, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and the Centre Pompidou in Paris, began acquiring and exhibiting her work. Her immersive infinity mirror rooms became must-see attractions, drawing millions of visitors. Her signature polka dots and pumpkins, once symbols of childhood hallucinations and personal struggles, had now transformed into global icons. Kusama had done something few artists achieve. She had created a universal visual language, one that resonated across cultures, generations, and artistic movements. But beyond the spectacle of her work lay a profound philosophical message. Kusama's art was not just about aesthetics. It was about obliteration of the self, dissolving the ego into infinity. Her polka dots were not mere decorations. They were a metaphor for the universe, a representation of the way everything, people, objects, thoughts, was connected, infinite, and ever-repeating. She once said, "Our Earth is only one polka dot among a million stars in the cosmos. Polka dots are a way to infinity." Her art was her way of confronting the vastness of existence, making sense of a chaotic world by repeating patterns, colors, and forms. Even as her fame grew, Kusama remained deeply disciplined and devoted to her craft. Despite her age, she continued to paint every day, often for hours at a time. Her works, once defined by bright, playful colors, took on a darker edge in later years. Massive canvases of intricate dots and nets, sometimes resembling cosmic voids, sometimes microscopic worlds. By the early 2000s, Kusama had transcended the boundaries of traditional fine art. Her influence extended into fashion, design, and popular culture. Luxury brands like Louis Vuitton collaborated with her, bringing her iconic dots to handbags, clothing, and accessories. Her installations became Instagram phenomena, drawing younger audiences who might never have stepped into a museum otherwise. But despite the commercial success, Kusama remained at heart the same artist she had always been, a woman who painted not for fame, but for survival. As Kusama's popularity soared, so did the demand for her exhibitions. Her infinity mirror rooms, once a deeply personal artistic experiment, became a global phenomenon. Museums reported record-breaking attendance numbers, with visitors willing to wait hours just for a few minutes inside one of her dazzling, immersive installations. Yet, Kusama herself remained distant from the spectacle. While the world marveled at her polka dots and infinity rooms, she continued her routine, painting in solitude within the walls of her psychiatric hospital. It was an ironic contrast. an artist who lived in near seclusion, yet whose work had never been more visible. Despite her delicate health, Kusama pushed forward. She was now well into her 90s, but her work showed no signs of slowing. Her paintings grew larger, more intricate, almost as if she were racing against time to leave behind an endless tapestry of her visions. And then, in 2016, another milestone. Her largest retrospective yet, titled Infinity Mirrors, launched in the United States. The exhibition traveled from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, Toronto, and Cleveland, each stop drawing unprecedented crowds. Kusama had become not just an art world legend, but a pop culture icon. But even as her fame reached new heights, Kusama's message remained deeply philosophical, personal, and existential. Her lifelong themes of infinity, self-obliteration, and the dissolution of ego resonated in an era where identity, technology, and human connection were increasingly complex. Kusama was not just an artist of the past. She was an artist of the present and the future, a visionary who had redefined what it meant to create and experience art. And through it all, she remained unapologetically herself, a woman who had defied expectations, battled mental illness, and transformed her pain into something eternal. She once reflected on her own journey with these words: "If it were not for art, I would have killed myself a long time ago." It was a stark, painful truth, but one that underscored the power of art, not just as a medium of expression, but as a means of survival. Even now, Yayoi Kusama's world continues to expand. She remains one of the most influential, beloved, and sought-after living artists. Her exhibitions still breaking attendance records, her works fetching millions at auctions. But beyond the fame, beyond the financial success, lies something much deeper, a legacy of resilience, imagination, and infinite creativity. For Kusama, art is not just something to be admired. It is something to be felt, experienced, and most of all lived. And so the dots continue. The mirrors reflect, the patterns repeat, and Yayoi Kusama's vision of infinity, her lifelong obsession, lives on forever. Yayoi Kusama's journey, from a small town in Japan to the world's most celebrated galleries, is a story of resilience, transformation, and artistic genius. But beyond the dazzling polka dots and infinite mirrors, her life remains a testament to the power of persistence, the necessity of self-expression, and the healing force of art. Few artists have blurred the line between art and life as Kusama has. Every stroke of her brush, every mirror she places, every dot she paints is deeply personal, a reflection of her inner world, her obsessions, and her lifelong struggle with mental illness. Her work is not just an aesthetic experience. It is an invitation to step into her universe, a place where reality dissolves, the self vanishes, and the infinite unfolds before our eyes. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Kusama's legacy is not just her art itself, but the way she has touched millions of people across generations. From young children marveling at her playful pumpkin sculptures to seasoned art critics analyzing her intricate patterns, Kusama has bridged the gap between the avant-garde and the mainstream, making art accessible, emotional, and universal. As we stand before her endless fields of dots, her mesmerizing infinity rooms, and her poetic visions of a limitless world, one thing becomes clear. Kusama's art is not just about seeing, it is about feeling, existing, and becoming part of something larger than ourselves. And in the end, perhaps that is Kusama's greatest gift to the world. The idea that in an infinite universe, we are all connected, one dot among millions, yet part of something eternal. Her journey, like her art, has no true ending. As long as her vision continues to inspire, to mesmerize, and to transport us beyond the limits of the known, Yayoi Kusama will remain forever. the artist of infinity.